welcome to the Confessions podcast, an audio array of terrible tales from some very sinful Radio 2 listeners, all seeking forgiveness from the caring collective.
Simon is off poorly, so it's down to me and Matt to introduce this week's Confessions podcast.
So this week's concise collection features the hushed-up harassment of the hounds.
There's a toe-timing travesty.
Deadly dishes the dirt on Mr. Denny.
We enjoyed our Presenters Confession Week, and that will return, by the way, very, very shortly, as soon as we can crowbar enough presenters into going, yeah, OK, fine, I'll tell my
whatever.
story. If it's a contractual requirement. Just having a word with contracts just to make sure that does go in. Tonight's comes from John. Thank you very much indeed, John, for tonight's tale. Father Simon, absolution required. It's 1990. I was working in my dad's gun shop. Now, I'd say there aren't many...
We're off to a good start with this one, aren't we?
Actually, supremely irrelevant for the way the story ends up.
Doesn't matter, we might make it relevant.
It was about 100 yards from the West Midlands Police Headquarters, Lloyd House. Ooh. Still now, as then, but the shop is long gone. It was a blistering hot July afternoon, and that is possibly why Birmingham city centre seemed unusually quiet. In those days, my dad's shop was a 1960s design classic, which meant that the whole front of the shop was made of what was then called plate glass.
Yeah.
Isn't it still called plate glass? Isn't it just plate glass?
Glass?
Yeah.
Just glass.
It's called
glass, I think you'll find.
Yeah.
Okay. Through this transparency membrane, says John unnecessarily...
Yeah, glass.
Glass. Through the glass, my friend Graham and I noticed the Birmingham Police Dog Squad having their photograph taken, strategically placed under the police headquarters' shiny entrance canopy, which is still there. The immaculate dog handlers and their German shepherds were arranged in a sort of a human pyramid. Super smart uniforms and clearly specially groomed dogs. It was quite an intricate assembly, Father Simon. Row upon row of coppers and dogs. Have you seen the photographs of them all done in display formation?
So the dog handlers are in a human pyramid?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you not seen this?
No. Why?
Yes.
Okay.
The dogs are hanging
It's
there.
a nice promo photograph.
Okay.
Now, in those days...
It's vital
Clearly,
to the story.
what I didn't know is that gun shops obviously sell other things. In those days, says John, we sold the Acme silent dog whistle.
Here we go.
Oh, by Acme.
He says this name is the real name of said whistle.
Really?
Acme.
A chrome-threaded tube, which, when blown, emits a pitch so high it is beyond the range of human hearing, but very audible to man's best friend.
Wow.
As the precarious dog and handler pyramid was finally calmed, the timid photographer, camera on tripod, because this is 1890, backed gingerly away from the assembled tableau, back to his tripod to capture the fragile moment for eternity. And only then did Graham and I blow with much force into the Acme silent dog whistles. The effect of what happened next was, from a photographer's point of view, devastating. All the dogs suddenly started barking. They went up on their back legs, pulling hard at the leads, escaping, snarling, woofing, yapping, straining to conform to the silent summons of the inaudible to humans silent whistle, and the pyramid collapsed. It took ages for them to settle. Slowly and carefully, they rebuilt the pyramid again. Finally, it was only when the group were ready to be captured on 35mm film again that we, at that precise moment, struck. Once more, the hounds of hell were let loose. Alsatians took off in all directions. Irate coppers running behind. Come back here, Rover. They probably didn't shout.
Acme and Rover.
Again, it took them ages to settle. We waited until the photographer was just at his camera when we struck for a third time again, yapping and barking and yelping and woofing. This is great with animal effects there for now.
Is it?
Here's the thing, says John. We did this for about 2 hours, maybe more.
2 hours?
The photographer became convinced that he was the reason the dogs kicked off and was ever more gingerly tiptoeing back to the camera with increasing fear and bewilderment. His whole body language was the funniest thing I have ever seen. We prolonged his torture for as long as it was possible. Each attempted photo resulted in angrier and angrier scenes of mayhem. He became a ballerina of the pavement, frightened to upset the dogs yet again, which, due to our expert timing of the silent whistle, he repeatedly appeared to. Eventually, we looked at each other and we'll let the guy take his photo. Frankly, I need forgiveness because without clemency, I clearly could face the full force of the West Midlands Police wrath, resulting in potential prosecution. It was clear the police on that day were never going to figure out why the dogs kept systematically reacting in such a violent and unrestrained way. But it was very funny in a Beano kind of way, despite the risk of the police getting angry. And there will no doubt be officers driving home from work who, if hearing this, will have a long overdue 25-year-old epiphany as to what actually happened that day. It is them from whom I seek forgiveness, says John. Well, who'd have thought there was such a thing as an Acme dog whistle?
Who'd have thought?
Or a dog called Rover.
Unless it is a Bash Street Kids sort of strip. Anyway, let's see what's happening here. And Sister Alice, what do you think?
I think I might forgive him because the photographer, to begin with, broke the cardinal sin of not working with children and animals. So he kind of knew what he was letting himself in for. And then, in the end, he was allowed to take the photograph. So I'm going to forgive.
Forgiveness from John. OK, so for John from Alice, what do you think, Dean of Deadliness?
I forgive on this occasion. It's a long time, though. 2 hours to be trying to take this photograph, I have to say. But no harm done. No one was hurt at any point. And what on earth were these two doing? Have they got nothing better to do for 2 hours than blow into a whistle? But I forgive you anyway, because no harm done.
Who'd have thought you can go into a gun shop and go, no, I'll have a whistle.
I'll have a dog whistle, please.
Whistle instead, please.
What do you think there, brother?
Whose idea is this human pyramid? It's ridiculous. It's got nothing to do with dogs or dog handlers. Let's put them all on a human pyramid.
It strikes me. Look how much control we have.
Yeah, it strikes me. It's got nothing. It's definitely not the police officer's fault, and I don't even think that it was the photographer's fault, because I think the photographer had lost patience with this well before 2 hours elapsed. I think it's down to management. I think management was saying, "Oh no, we want to have them all in the pyramid so we can sell the pictures on the calendar," and for that reason, I am going to forgive, because frankly, it sounds like management gone nuts. And yes,
Fine.
yeah.
And yes.
Tonight's confession comes from Jez. Thank you very much indeed, Jez. Dear Simon and the happy, tolerant team of forgiveness givers, I would like you to listen to my tale of misdirection and pork pie telling. It goes back to the balmy summer of September 1990, when I was on a conservation working holiday in Kent. The work this particular week was extremely arduous, as we were driving wooden pilings into a hard gravel riverbed using hand tools. The work had been advertised as something much easier, but that had obviously fallen through at a late stage, and the organisers had to find a replacement work at short notice. Hence we were doing work usually done by a JCB. Other diggers are available on a barge. As this work was extremely tiring and not really suitable for a group of 14 to 15 volunteers, there was more than the usual amount of standing around, not doing anything, than there would normally have been on one of these holidays. Anyway, this is what my confession's all about. I don't wear a watch, Father Simon. So when one of the others asked me what the time was, I could simply have told him I didn't have the time and that he should ask someone else. But as I like to be helpful, I glanced down, looking at the wrist of whoever was standing next to me, caught a look at their watch. 3:30, I said helpfully. Wow, how did you know that? They said. How did I know what? Well, I asked you the time, and you looked down at your feet, and you told me the time.
Okay.
Right. So, I'm thinking quickly here, says Jez. You mean you don't know how to tell the time using your feet?
There's a sentence we haven't done yet. Yeah.
I thought everybody knew how to do that. Well, everyone looked at me amazed, and of course not a single one of them knew how to tell their time with their feet. Well, I said, it's very simple. You point one foot to the north. I looked around pretending to work out where the north was, planted one of my feet in a vaguely northern direction. You then point your other foot towards the sun, and then the angle between them tells you the time. See, look, that's obviously 3:30. And to my utter amazement, I was greeted not with howls of disbelief, but with a shocked and impressed silence. I bet there's someone trying it now, even though there's no sun. Before long, everyone had heard that I could tell the time with my feet, and most of the others appeared to believe it. Later that day, and for the next couple, I was frequently and randomly accosted by people saying, "Go on then," asking me the time, and I would make a great pretense of finding north, finding the sun, pointing my feet in the right direction, all the time glancing around to see if I could see someone else's watch. One of the other volunteers, a lass called Becky, had asked me whether I really could do this, and I told her the truth. Anyway, from then on, we were a team. Whenever anyone asked me the time, I'd move my feet into place, glance around at Becky, and sure enough, she'd be there mouthing the time to me. Everyone else was so busy inspecting my feet that they never ever noticed. Good misdirection, Jez. However, eventually the novelty started to wear off, and I assumed that people had worked out it was a trick. At the end of the week, a couple came up to me and asked whether it was actually for real, and I said, of course it's for real. If you learn and if you practice hard, you'll be able to do it too. Apparently, I learnt later, they tried all weekend to get their feet in the right position so they could tell the time. And once they thought they'd sussed it, and they deliberately used their feet to calculate what time they should go to the cinema. And they missed the movie by an hour.
Hey!
Anyway, I don't want to ask forgiveness to anyone in the group who was daft enough to believe this nonsense, or unobservant enough not to notice Becky going, 2:10, or something similar. I would, however, like to ask forgiveness from Becky, who went on to be a police officer, but has always had this deception hanging heavily over. I do like the sound of Jez, because he managed to get away with that. In years gone by, he could probably done that as a party trick or something, or gone to the circus or a freak show and charged money. Anyway, let's see what Sister Alice makes of that and whether she forgives Jez or not for that.
I am going to forgive Jez, and I'm also going to forgive his accomplice Becky, even though she's not asked for it, because I just think it's an ingenious ploy, and as someone that doesn't wear a watch myself, I think I might even try it myself.
Lying to your friend. I think it's going to be carrying on here. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. Anyway, Sister Bobby from the Priory.
Human sundials is a lovely idea. Surely it should work. There's some kind of science in this that it should work, shouldn't it? Maybe not if you're facing the north, but there should be a way of making it. Well, you're in a dark studio. You great idiot.
6 grapefruit and 4 oranges.
Of course you forgive. What a lovely idea. I'm really surprised you managed to keep it going for so long and they didn't catch you. So, of course, utterly forgiven. Great idea. We'll try it.
Jez was with a bunch of thickies.
Well, no. Now, here's the thing. I think the reason, as Bobby says, there is a grain of truth here. I remember being taught how to tell which way is north by pointing your watch and getting the hour hand to point at the sun, and you can then work out which way is north from that. So, because of that, I would have believed, if he'd said, yes, I can do it by pointing my feet in the north, I would have believed him. And so, for that reason, I am not going to forgive, because I would have been taken in, and that's not fair.
Do you think Matt was on a similar conservation project with Jez?
I reckon.
Jez.
Yeah, I reckon Matt's been taken in by this.
But no, it's true. You point
So
your
you
watch.
think if you put if I put one foot to
Yes,
the north and the other foot to the
I
sun,
would buy that. I would go, really? But then you think, well, why are you bothering with your feet when you're wearing a watch? Just tell the time from your watch. So for that reason, I am going to forgive.
Now, normally, obviously, the confession is my gig because it's my thing.
Yeah.
But on the basis that it would be a bit of a strain for everybody to listen to me reading a couple of pages of top entertaining script, I thought we'd hand it over to, for the first time ever, to the voice of the balls, who now is more super flexible and smug than ever.
So does Dudley pass judgment as well on his own confession?
Yeah, I might do, yeah.
Well, let's see.
It's not my confession.
Let's just see how it goes. So here is tonight's confession, and it comes from Martin. Over to you, Deadly.
Dear Father Simon and the overly zealous collective.
Yeah.
Following a recent confession regarding the punishment of a teacher by means of a stage bear suit, don't think I was here for that one, I feel the need to confess a sin that I committed over 35 years ago. It was during the late 1970s that I attended a well-known preparatory school. When we were 11 years old, my best friend Mark, now a respected dentist in the southwest of England, and I found ourselves in the class of Mr. Denny Patterson.
Right.
Note that down. Denny Patterson. Mr. Patterson was a universally loved and respected teacher who specialised in history and had a mellifluous delivery that made us dread the period after lunch and the ever-present threat of drooping eyelids. Nonetheless...
What was that?
That was me yawning. Nonetheless, we were eternally grateful to have avoided the parallel class of Mr. Watt that was populated by the more stolid members of our year group. Old Denny had a few faults in our eyes, but one foible did catch our attention. There was a fad at the time for that useful and eternally entertaining substance, blue tack, in the school, such that it became a stress ball, a modelling substance, and 1,000 other things that it was never intended by its manufacturer to be. At this point, I'd like to point out that other squidgy, sticky materials for holding up wall posters are available.
That was so written.
Is that true, though?
I don't think that's true.
Is there any alternative?
I think our producer may have intervened at that point.
She almost certainly did.
So what happened? Let me take you back 35 years. We would build up great fist-sized lumps of the stuff in our personal stashes, and Denny, like the rest of us, became caught up in this fad. Whenever he wandered past the desk of a boy with his head down, working away, that had a lump of blue tack within reach, he would snatch it up and begin to furiously squeeze, stretch and otherwise manipulate the ball, probably reflecting the induced stress of trying to drum historical facts into reluctant boys' heads. He could model a nifty Viscount Palmerston, a Queen Victoria and a blue tack version of Windsor Castle.
Nice. Well, we are in a classy school here, aren't we?
I'd like
First
to
thing you think of is
see
Viscount Palmerston. Brilliant.
Carry on.
Don't think you normally interrupt Simon, do you?
No, I think I do.
We boys were pretty miffed. There's no needle here. We boys were pretty miffed when this happened, as the swiped sticky tack invariably ended up on Denny's pile rather than back on our own desk where it started from. I suspect he saw this as a good way of removing one more distraction from our scribbling fountain pen ink-stained hands. My mate Mark and I decided that something had to be done to stop this annoying habit of Denny's, so we hatched a plan. Just before his next lesson began, we set our trap. Combining a significant amount from both of our personal stashes, we formed a ball of sticky tack.
Sticky tack, by the way, is BBC code for blue tack.
Is it?
It's just been changed so that it doesn't...
Sticky tack.
No one
It's
calls it sticky
ridiculous.
tack. It's
Any
blue
sense.
tack. Carry on.
The trick... I was rolling my eyelids at that point. The trick then was to place our booby trap in a position in the room that wasn't too obvious, but which Denny would see. His normal lesson plan was to talk about the topic for the lesson, then set us an exercise to complete in class to help reinforce the newly gained knowledge. And it's during this exercise he would commence his peripatetic activities, and this is exactly how it went on that fateful day. The lump was duly found... I'll have that, thank you very much. And then squeezed absent-mindedly. Ah, foolish. You see, Father Simon, this big ball of sticky stuff was hollow. And Mark and I had emptied the contents of both our many platinum pen cartridges into, do you remember those? Into its interior and then carefully sealed it up. We watched Denny's hand. He played with the ball, rolling it around in his hand. He threw it gently in the air. We held our breath. This could get nasty. He rubbed it up and down his leg like he was about to bowl. We held our breath. And then, to emphasise a point about Gladstone's Home Rule Bill, why wouldn't you, he clapped his hands together. The blue tack collapsed under his powerful hands and the ink bomb exploded.
Fantastic.
Blue goo shot everywhere. Floor, ceiling, desks, pupils, Denny's clothes, his white shirt, ink all running down his wrists and dripping on his shoes. Poor Denny, who would have thought pen cartridges contained so much ink. Did he go crazy? Did he go crazy?
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't. Did he throw the blackboard rubber at the nearest head?
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't. No. With the calmness of a man who'd seen active service in the armed forces in his younger days, he called an early end to the lesson and went to wash as much as he could of the ink off. Mark and I remained unapprehended.
Yes.
So, Father Simon, I'd like to seek forgiveness, not from Denny, who we helped to cure of a habit that even he himself must have found annoying, and not from our classmates, who we deprived of 10 minutes of a history lesson, but rather from Mrs. Denny Patterson, who must have had the unenviable task of attempting to remove the royal blue ink from her husband's clothes.
He might have tried to do it himself. If he'd been in the armed forces, he might have done his own cleaning.
Didn't understand any of that.
No.
Wait. Shut up. Mother said there'd be days like this, and she was so right. I await your verdict in humble silence, Martin. Thank you, Martin. That was a good one. I enjoyed that.
Who would have thought an ink bomb could be made with a little bit of blue tack or sticky tack,
Very clever.
as no one calls it.
Sticky tack.
Sister Rebecca.
I'm impressed by Denny's modelling skills, actually. So he's obviously so good at modelling, but not very observant. He didn't notice that this thing was slightly different and it was full of ink. I can't actually believe you can have a bomb, a blue tack.
Why don't you
bomb
try it
with
at home
ink
with
in
your
it.
family?
I just don't believe that would work. But anyway, he didn't notice it, so that was a bit weird. But I do feel sorry for his wife having to clean it up. But he was stealing other people's blue tack, so he kind of deserved it. Therefore, I'm going to forgive you.
I bet he did his own cleaning.
Well, it's Mrs. Denny that we're sort of considering, isn't it? This poor Mrs. Denny and the cleaning.
I know, but because her husband was, at
So they're
fault,
roped in.
they're both at fault, I think.
So you would
yeah.
take any responsibility for your husband's...
Absolutely, I would.
Okay, you can
Forgiven.
Desmond, you can stand down now.
I don't have to. Yeah.
Excellent.
Matthew.
Yes, I'm definitely going to forgive. If for no other reason than the fact that we had to say sticky tack throughout that confession, when everyone knows it's blue tack. BBC lawyers, worth every penny. Well done. So yes, I'm going to forgive because he was fine with it. The teacher was fine with it, and I happen to think that the teacher probably washed it himself rather than leaving it to his wife.
Yes.
So for that reason, I'm forgiving. Well, they were this week's confessions. Who did you forgive? Send in your own shadowy secret, perhaps inspired by one of those. confessions@bbc.co.uk.
More in a week, and the Weekly Mayo is available to download now and every Friday. Thank you.